Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This time out, a USB audio interface from Audient. Let's get started. This is the Audient iD22, a USB audio interface that provides up to 10 inputs and up to 14 outputs. Let's check out the back panel and look at those inputs and outputs. Starting on the right side of the back panel, we've got two preamp inputs, and those can be set up as XLR inputs or balanced TRS inputs. And we've also got a direct input that can feed channel 2. Next to those preamp inputs, we have two sends and returns. Now the nice thing about these is that they're on separate jacks, so we actually have a balanced output on the send and we have a balanced input on the return. This lets us connect external hardware such as a compressor and EQ while tracking. The other thing it lets you do is completely bypass the preamp circuit if you want to use an external microphone preamp. You simply bring that into the return and you're feeding directly into the digital converter inside the Audient. Next to that, we have our 4 analog outputs, and we can configure those in several different ways. We can set it up so that we have 2 pairs of monitor outputs. We could have a set of monitor outputs and then 2 mono Q outputs for feeding headphones. We could have a set of monitor outputs and then a stereo Q output for headphones. Next to that, we also have a dedicated headphone output that can be fed from its own feed in the mixer. Above the outputs, we have the optical connections, and as I mentioned earlier, those can be configured either for stereo SpeedIF or for 8-channel ADAT format. Moving to the top panel of the iD22, on the left side, we have controls for the preamps. So we have 2 level controls, switchable phantom power, we've got a 10 dB pad for each channel, polarity reverse, and a 100 Hz high-pass filter. Moving to the center and the right side of the front panel, we've got our monitor control section. The large knob controls monitor volume level. Below that, we have a dim switch for cutting the volume level of the monitors, and we've got a cut switch, which completely mutes the monitors. On the right side of the front panel, we have the headphone volume controls, and then we have 3 soft switches labeled F1, F2, and F3. I've got F1 configured to sum the monitor output to mono for phase checking. F2 switches to a second set of monitors using outputs 3 and 4, and F3 is our talkback switch for activating a talkback microphone, which we can configure to come into any input on the iD22. This is a software application for the iD22, and it gives us control over all the functions in the interface. What I like about this app is that it lets us configure the view to see only what we need for the task that we're performing. Let me show you what I mean. In this case, we're looking at the microphone inputs here on the left. We've got feeds that go to the Q send, which can go to headphones. We've got 2 of those. They can be either mono or stereo. We've got pan for each input channel. We've got level. We've got solo mute. And we've got a level meter as well. Now we can decide which things we're actually showing within this view. For example, if we want to see the optical inputs, we can turn that on. They appear here. We're in SpeedIF format, so we've got 2 channels. If we were in ADAT format, there would be 8 of those channels arrayed across the screen. Now, if we're just tracking with the microphones and that's all we want to see, we can turn off the things we're not using. So we could turn off the optical, we could turn off the returns from our DAW, and just look at the microphones and the master section. So let's expand this back out. We'll turn the optical and the DAW mixes back on. Over here we have our master section. We have master stereo meters. We've got masters for our Q send. Here's where we choose our channel view. And down here is our monitor control section. This is mono summing for the stereo output. We've got polarity reverse. This is where we turn our talkback mic on and off if we're not using a front panel switch. Switching to our second set of monitors, and the dim control and the cut control, which are the same as are on the front panel of the iD22. The app features a digital patching system that allows us to route the inputs to the outputs and to remove any latency that might be in the signal when we're tracking. So if we open the system view up, it shows us this patching. First of all, we configure our digital format here. Digital input and output can be set separately, so you could feed in with the 8 ADAT channels and come out with stereo SpeedIF. We can choose our clock source. And here's where we assign our talkback microphone. We can set that to any of the inputs that we want. We also can set up our mono mode when we're using summing. And at the bottom, we've got trims for setting up the level of our dim when we cut down the volume level on the monitors or when we switch to a second set of monitors. On the right of the app, we can see our routing matrix. Here's where we set up what's feeding our analog outputs. First, we've got outputs 1 and 2, and in this case, I've got them set to feed the main mix, which means what's coming in on the microphone preamps goes straight out, and we have no latency when we're monitoring. We could also send that to the alternate speakers, we could send it to the Q mixes for headphones, or we could listen to what's coming back from the DAW, the digital feed that's coming straight out of the software. We can independently route what's coming out of output 1 and 2, output 3 and 4, and output 5 and 6, which is the headphone output. So we have discrete control over all 3 stereo sets of outputs. In the same way, we can set up what's feeding the digital outputs. So here we've got all 8 channels coming from the ADAT output, and we can assign the source that's feeding those. If you have several different tasks that you're repeating over and over, say you're tracking and then you're mixing, you can save and you can load configurations of the routing matrix and recall those at any time. Using the iD22 is as simple as installing the software, connecting the hardware, and then making your settings. And in most cases, once those settings are set up, you don't ever have to change them again, so you can hide them. So I'll go ahead and hide the system here. And if we want to just record a single microphone, we can go ahead and turn off our optical outputs. We can turn off our DAW mixes. I've got a microphone connected here, so we can set our level on that microphone, bring it in, and we can see it on the meter. If we need to turn on phantom power, we can. If we need a pad, we can do that. Once we have our signal set up the way we like it, we can switch over to our DAW. In this case, I've got Pro Tools loaded, and you can see that same input is feeding into the first channel in Pro Tools here. Using the pull-down menu, we have access to all the inputs. So here's our 8 ADAT inputs, as well as our 2 analog inputs, and we can also route to any of the outputs here. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Audient iD22 USB audio interface. It's a really nice interface with great sounding preamps. They're rich, they're clean, and they're detailed, and they have plenty of gain even for low-level ribbon mics. All that routing flexibility means that you can handle whatever you've got going on in your rig, and I love those balanced send and return jacks on the back panel. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.